Hello everyone. Today's topic is on physical abuse. Abuse in general is intentional harm to the child. What I talk about is not pleasant, but is necessary. Anybody who works with children will have the opportunity to turn into CPS or law enforcement the suspicion of abuse. And so I wanted to give you what's called red flags. There's no way to determine for sure if a child's been abused. It's not our place to do that as educators, but it is our place to be on the lookout and be aware. And anytime you suspicion something, make sure you document the date you saw, exactly what you saw, what the child said to you, if you asked them any questions, things of that nature. But we know that children fall down. We know that children do get bruised up. So let me discuss with you more specifically signs to be on the lookout for. Okay. We're going to be looking for pattern injuries. That is essentially the main thing. What's possessed in all of us is a fight or flight. If we're in a panic situation, we are either going to fight them or we're going to move away. Well, I'm a total of 5'2", and yet I would be a giant to a 5-year-old, let's say. So if I'm angry and I'm approaching the child, he is likely to move away from me. So therefore, anytime you see marks on the back of the neck down to the behind the knees, that is automatically a sign of suspicion, because it's usually when the child is moving away from danger. When a child trips and falls down, he's going to fall down ahead of him. So you're going to see bruises on his forearms, on his knees, and that's pretty common. But you're not going to be seeing the marks as much on the back when it's an accident. It can happen. That's why we call them red flags, but it's not as likely to happen. Okay, when you see a mark somewhere, typically again on the back of the legs, but it can be otherwise, and it has a little sign like this or a little pattern, and oh gosh, I'm so not a artist, but here's a hanger, and you see like this much on the back. That could be a wire hanger where a child has been hit. Any kind of loop mark from electrical cord, that could be a belt buckle, could be another one. And then I mentioned the coat hanger. The other part I want to talk to you about, these were called pattern marks. These are let me just put pattern marks here. I want to go into burns. Oh gosh, this is my least favorite to discuss. But again, with the fight or flight, if there is something called a splash burn on a child, okay, this is when the child is moving away from the caregiver and she has a cup of coffee and she splashes onto the child. Or if there is boiling water and she's cooking dinner. And I say she, yes, men and women both will physically abused. But interestingly, it is the female who does it more than the male, and that's just statistics, and I believe it's because there's something commanding about a man's voice that makes a child behave, plus he's around the female usually more often. And so a little bit of interesting statistics. It's not pointing fingers. It happens in all races. It happens in both genders, and it happens no matter how much money a person makes. It's just going to, sadly, it just does occur, so we need to be aware of it. So if you see a splash mark in the back, you need to make note of that, because it's likely been that the child has had something scorching hot poured on him. All right. The other one I want you to be aware of is a submerged burn. This is terrible. The number one time a child is going to be abused is around potty training time. Interestingly, the other time is as a teenager. There's a lot of physical abuse in teenagers. Dating, yes, but also by parents or caregivers. But a submerged burn is, okay, you got the hot water in the bathtub and angry at the child and holding the child in the hot water, and you'll see a line on their waist down where it's all burned. And the only place it won't be burned is the buttocks, and that's because it was protected on the pores of the bathtub. But if there's a line mark and a burn all the way down, I mean, a child might step into hot water, but I don't know of anybody who's going to, oh, this is really hot, let me sit down in this painful and have this painful experience. So that is something to be aware of when there's a line and it goes all the way down. Okay, and then the last one is and I mentioned pattern marks, but let me come back to that. Children might pick up a cigarette and they might accidentally burn themselves, but I don't know of any child who's going to repeatedly burn himself on his forearms. So if you see something like that, if he's walking funny, he takes his shoes off, you might see him at the bottom of the feet. these people that are going to abuse a child physically know that they're going to be at school the next day, so they are often going to try to cover it up. So they might have them wear long sleeves when it's a warmer day, put them on the bottom of the feet because they likely leave their shoes on. So these are indicators that abuse is probably going on, and definitely call it in under any suspicion. Again, you don't have to prove it. You have to, only under the suspicion do you prove it. It's a good idea to tell the principal, the director, whoever you work with, but you still call it in. Don't leave it on them. Legally, it's your responsibility to call that in. Kids do get bruises, okay? We know that. But if you see clusters of bruises, again, typically on the backside somewhere, then that could be a repeated abuse going on, hit over and over. If the bruises are in different colors, then that could be it's ongoing. So it's in different healing stages, but it's still ongoing. It goes on. If there's been an absence, let's say it's over every Monday you see a new bruise, or after Christmas, after a long period when you're not around the child, you might see a fresh set of bruises. So it's something to be aware of too. And the last thing I want to talk to you about on physical abuse are broken bones. Kids get broken bones as a school ager. So 5 years to 12 years, it's not uncommon to see a kid in a broken arm, typically falling from a tree, but obviously there are other ways. Ice skating can do it, of course. But when the child is 4 years and younger in a cast, that is a risk sign. It does happen. I mean, sometimes a child has a congenital type situation where he has to be in a cast for a hip placement protection. So if you see somebody who's a 3 or 4 year old in a cast, don't automatically assume that child has been abused. But when a child is born, there is a lot of cartilage. You can move your nose and your ears, and it's very bendable and pliable, and that's how a little baby is. So when an infant gets a broken bone, typically it's from a child being swung and hit against something. It's not from falling off of a bed. There may be a rare case where that happens. That's why, again, they're red flags. But typically, if a young child, 12 months and younger, has a fracture, then that's likely abuse. I would be very, very concerned. And then up to the age of 5, it's not as likely that a child will have a broken bone for the same reason. The cartilage is hardening into bone, but they are still very pliable. So it takes twisting the arm or trying to really, takes a lot of force behind that for a young child to have a broken bone. Again, the exception could be a congenital situation where a child needs to have something fixed from a birth defect or something of that nature, or accidents that can occur. So it's not a judgment thing, it's just a protective thing. If you ever see something like this, you need to call it in. And let me also add, if you're in a situation where a child does break his arm, or something big like that happens, it's like time stands still and you remember everything. You remember what the child was wearing, what it said. It's like everything goes in slow motion. So you remember a lot of details. So if a caregiver is asked, what happened to Johnny's eye or whatever? I don't really remember. I was there, but they're a little bit vague. That can also be a red flag. And if they have different stories, the child says something different, the caregiver says something. Again, just some red flags, things to be on the lookout for. I hope this is helpful. It's very tragic to ever see a child abused. It is our opportunity to believe the child, to ask questions, to love the child unconditionally, protect the child in every way we can, which is calling law enforcement and also or child protective services. If you are an educator, you could have a very structured day that's wholesome and full of age-appropriate activities, where that time in the day it's just a peaceful and a respite for that child, and do everything you can to have it stopped. And please know that it does go on, but if we tell people about it, it's one of the number one ways to stop it. And do know too, parents get stressed out if at any time we need to go to them and say, let me take your kids for a while. I don't mean as the teacher, excuse me, but let's say you're the neighbor and you see a single mom, or the parents the dad lost his job or something. You say, you know what, Friday night I have the kids, you guys go out, enjoy yourselves. It does take a village to raise our kids, and parents do get stressed, so we need to remember that and chip in and compliment also. If you see a child being treated well, if I'm in a store and I see a mom and she's being kind to her child, I love to tell her, I love to see that kind of thing with your kid, and it's so nice to see. So anyway, it's okay to be positive. Hang in there, and I will be talking to you soon. Take care.